Hi, folks. It is time to talk about the deeper truths of Jesus feeding the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. This is our Bible story at preschool this week, and you probably heard the basics of it. What few people remember is that this miracle occurs 2 times in Jesus' life. First, he feeds the 5,000 men, in addition to women and children who are following him. And secondly, he feeds 4,000. And interpretations differ as to why is this miracle here 2 times. The people who don't look very closely say, well, it's the same thing. They just accidentally put it in there twice. That's not the case. In fact, Jesus makes a point in his teaching that he did this miracle 2 times. It is in a form of doubling the lesson. And there's a lesson in this great miracle, in this feeding of the 5,000. What are the deeper truths of what's going on here? Obviously, it's about how Jesus is compassionate and is able to provide for the needs of the people who are around him. Very good and very clear. One of the comments that Jesus makes, one of the times that he feeds thousands of people, is that he notices they've been following him at a length of a great distance and perhaps for a number of days. At one point, he says, they've been with me for 3 days, and I don't want to send them away empty. If I send them away empty, they might faint on the way. I have compassion for the crowds, he says, because they are harassed and beaten down. They're like sheep without a shepherd. So the image, of course, that we see of this man Jesus, who gains a literal following for himself as he travels from town to town, people are so willing to remain with him that they're following him wherever he goes. And they probably pack some rations for the road, maybe not knowing exactly how long they were going to be with him, how long a weekend they were taking with Jesus, only knowing that what he said was good and the things he was doing were saving people. At this point, though, he knows that they're running out of rations, that they're hungry, that perhaps they've been fasting for a while, and they're at a location where they're not close to home, they're not close to a town, they're not close to a market. And it says he had compassion on the people. That means, of course, that word, that special Greek word, splanchnizomai, that he felt in his bowels something for the people. His heart was touched by the need that he's recognizing in them. And of course, he reckons himself as a shepherd of these sheep. And so he tells the disciples, give these people something to eat, which was a test of their understanding, a test of their faith. They've been with the Lord now all these days, all these months. Do they really think that there's nothing he can do? When he says, I'm going to have you give to these people, they say, we can't do it. We can't afford it. Not enough money, not enough bread for it. Jesus, of course, means that something special is going to happen. They point out that there is a boy who had a lunch of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. I'm not sure if there's any real symbolic meaning to those things. Look it up if you want. You might be able to find something good. But Jesus takes the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish in his hands. And he has the disciples direct the people to sit down in groups of, I think, 50s and 100s, little garden plots, as it were, is literally what it says. Sit down in garden plots on the green grass, is what it says. Why does it say they're on the green grass? What's the point of that? Well, maybe it's referring to Jesus' status as a shepherd who makes his sheep to lie down in green pastures. Psalm 23, who restores their souls, who leads them in paths of righteousness, even for his name's sake. And though they walk through the valley of the shadow of death, they need fear no evil, for he is with them. What Jesus does is he takes the bread and gives thanks. And these words echo what you hear at the Lord's Supper, what you hear at Holy Communion. Jesus took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to his disciples. And the disciples gave it to the people. And there were pretty soon 12 baskets left over. All the people ate of bread and fish, and they were satisfied. This is to teach us also how we give thanks for our daily bread. You know that, of course, in the Old Testament, when the nation of Israel, and by the millions, were following Moses through the desert, they were fed every day with bread from heaven. Some form of grain or some form of flour that came from the heavens and ended up on the ground every morning, miraculously. Jesus again confirms that he is the bread who has come down from heaven. In that same way, he can provide all our needs of body and soul. And in his hands, with his blessing, with the blessing that each of us asks on our meals, morning, noon, and evening, we teach our children to pray before we eat. Why is this? It's not merely a tradition of emptiness, but it is to say that with God's blessing, this food, these clothes, this paycheck, these toys, whatever it is, what God gives me will go farther and will do more to prosper his creation than all of the riches of anyone who does not believe in him. For it is not by bread alone that we live, but by every word that is pronounced by the mouth of God. When we have the blessing of God upon our food, then it will be good for us. Without the blessing of God, who knows? Bread will not save us, but the blessing of God. And so we ask a blessing. And Jesus himself lifts his eyes to heaven as he breaks the bread and blesses the Lord, asks a blessing. It's a good example for all of us, especially who are parents, who are raising children, to teach our children the meaning of food, to teach our children the meaning of money, the meaning of material, the meaning of everything we see around us. It was created by the Word of God and is upheld and strengthened by it, and we can only use it rightly if the Word of God dwells in our hearts as well. We use it in thanksgiving. We use it in an attitude of sharing and compassion. The 12 baskets that were picked up after the people ate were not just dumped into the water, were they? They were presumably used again for those who were hungry. And so we do the same thing with our leftovers. We do the same thing with the excess that God has so generously provided. We use it for the hungry. That's about all for now. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you again for more deeper truths of our Bible stories.